Hello and Namaste. I'm Mukta and you're watching Desi Deutsch, Indian living in Germany. And I'm a little sad to tell you guys that this is my last video. In this background, because we are moving to another apartment and up till now we were living in a fully furnished apartment. So this couch belongs to the landlord, so I cannot take it along with me. So I'll be looking out for a new background in my new apartment, and I might seek out your suggestions via poll or things like that to help me in deciding which background would go best. Or we might go for different backgrounds for different videos, whatever suits. Let me know in the comments below, huh? But because we have recently experienced the apartment hunting and finding a place to live here in Germany, I thought that's a good topic to make a video on. What do you think? If you think that it is, then keep watching. So as I said, we'll be moving to another apartment and we are shifting mainly this weekend. So when you'll be watching this video, I will be moving stuff from this place to my new place. And I'm really very excited to go to my new place because we got the apartment that we loved the most out of the apartments that we had a look at during our hunt. And honestly, I must tell you that we were really lucky to have it because that's not the case in many of the people's cases. At least I've heard so. Generally, you require hard work, pre-planning and a lot of luck in order to find an accommodation according to your preference and within your budget. So getting to know about the whole process or the important things is a must according to my opinion. And honestly, I have a lot of information to give to you. So I think this video is going to be really very long. Over here you will be able to see, but I can only imagine that it's going to be very long. So I thought that it would be a good idea to divide it into 6 categories so that if you are looking for information in only one segment, you can jump right to it. So the categories and the timestamps would be mentioned in the description box, so you can directly skip if you want to and go to the part that you are interested in or looking for. So the categories are types, search, cost, expectations, process, contract and formalities. So let's start with the types. Now, the type of accommodation would be highly dependent on the purpose, whether you're living for a short term or a long term. For short term accommodation, what first pops up in our mind is a hotel. And that's ideal for a vacation. In fact, Airbnb is also, because you have more or less the same price or a little lesser in Airbnb and you get to have the cultural feeling. But if your short term is not that very short, like if you're living for a month or so, then hotel and Airbnb can be really expensive. And in that case, I would suggest you to go for a sublet. A sublet is when a tenant lends out his or her apartment that he or she is currently living in. So a landlord has rented out the apartment to a tenant and the tenant is temporarily not going to use it. Maybe the tenant is going for a vacation. So for a month or two, the tenant is not using it and hence would not like to just pay for something that's not going to be of use. So the tenant will rent it out to someone else. At times the tenant does it at the same rent that he or she pays to the landlord, at times a little higher if the furniture belongs to the tenant, and many a times it's even lower because you have a bargaining edge, right? If the person does not have a lot of offers depending on the location, then rather than not getting anything, it's better to get something. So depends on situation. But a sublet would obviously be very reasonable if you're looking for an accommodation for a month or two. And if you're looking for a cheap or reasonable accommodation for your vacation in Europe, then consider living in youth hostels. Especially if you're a young person or a few people traveling and you do not want a lot of luxuries that a hotel offers, then a youth hostel where you share your place with a lot of other people works good. Especially if your plan is to roam around the whole day and you need a room just to hit the bed at night and keep a little bit of your luggage that you might be having. Now let's move on to a long-term solution. If you are looking for a permanent place to live or a long-term one like an year or 6 months or things like that, then you can either rent an apartment or if you're a student, you can talk to your university and check for university hostels. And if you're planning to do that, it's always better to do it as soon as possible because the hostels might go house fill pretty soon. And if you want to live in an apartment but do not want to pay that very much, then it's always an option to go for a sharing apartment wherein a few students live in one particular apartment and they share the kitchen, the bathroom and such places. Some even share the room, some have a separate room depending on the budget and the location. So I hope that now you have a good idea about the types of accommodations, and looking forward we will be discussing mainly related to finding an apartment and not the other types, because you can easily find the details related to the hotel or Airbnb or youth hostels in their respective websites, or there are some apps that would help you compare the prices and find the best place. You also have the Airbnb app, and for the university hostels, it's always better that you directly contact the university and not look for information from any other source. Although if you want to know more details about a student's accommodation, then I'm already in talks with AISA, and we will be uploading videos related to student life in Germany on AISA's YouTube channel, and most probably we'll be starting with the video uploads in the month of August. In that, we are planning to make video about student hostel life and students living in shared apartment, and you can look forward to that in their channel. So I'll also put a link to their channel in the description box. So moving on to the second category, which is the search. Now, whether you're looking for an apartment for single occupancy or shared apartment, it is always a good idea to look out for Facebook groups. You can post your request to a Facebook group related to the location that you're planning to live in, and many a times you'll also be able to find a few groups that are specially made in order to find tenants or apartments on rent or even buy and sell property. Such is the case especially if you're planning to live in a big city like Berlin or Munich. Word of mouth also helps a lot, so do let all your friends and your acquaintances know that you're looking for an apartment so that they can help you if they have anything in their mind. You can also look at the newspaper advertisements to get some leads, but the best way to look around for an apartment is to go online. There are specific websites that lets you find good apartments in Germany. Now, the top two websites are WG Gesucht and Immobilien Scout. I've heard that Toy Town Germany is also got a website in order to look at apartments and places to live in, but we never tried it out. What we went with was WG Gesucht and Immobilien Scout, and we found our apartment from WG Gesucht. I've also got to know a few more websites since then, so I'll be putting the links to those websites in the description box so that you can look around and see which website suits you the best. Generally, I've seen that if you're looking for a small apartment or a shared apartment, then WG Gesucht is your site to go. And if you're looking for a big apartment or a bungalow or a family house, then Immobilien Scout proves to be better. So you can make your pick according to your requirements. Now let's look at the cost part of it. Overall, everything in Germany will tend to be more expensive when you head towards south as compared to north. So obviously the cost of living is comparatively cheaper in north and comparatively expensive in south. So you can very well assume that such is the case even when you talk about renting a place to live in. Also, if you're looking at a flat that's located near to the city center, then it's ought to be more expensive. But you'll be able to find a lot of economical options in the outskirts of the city or a nearby village. The rent that you pay for your flat is normally divided into the basic rent, utility cost, and which actually turns out to the total rent. The basic rent is called Kaltmiete, which literally translates to cold rent. Then you add up the utilities into it. Utilities normally include your electricity, heating, water, and such things. And you come up to a final rent, which is your Warmmiete, which literally translates to warm rent. The cost of overall maintenance of the building, the garbage bins, etc. are annual costs, and hence they would be mentioned in your contract. At times, they're also included in your basic rent, but not every time. So you can check for that with the landlord. Generally, the overall rent does not include the rent of a garage. So if you own a car and you need a parking space for it, you need to pay a garage rent separately for that. And that as well would be mentioned in your contract, or you can ask your landlord about it. We'll be talking more about the contract and other formalities later on in this video. But right now, focusing from the cost perspective, I did give you a little hints around it. A deposit is to be paid to the landlord, which is generally equal to 2 to 3 months of your Kaltmiete, so the cold rent, which is the basic rent. and that is obviously giving an surety as to you will be utilizing the place properly, you won't be damaging anything, and if you do, then the landlord can deduct that amount from the deposit that you're having. Otherwise, you'll be getting the deposit back once you move out. Now, I heard that the deposit is to be deposited in a bank account that is under joint ownership of the landlord and the tenant, so that the interest would go to the tenant and not to the landlord. In fact, sometimes the tenant also opens a separate bank account and gives all the documents related to the bank account to the landlord, so that the tenant is not going to withdraw that amount unless the landlord permits him to or her to. And once the thing is over, they are moving out, then the landlord would just give back the documents if everything is fit and fine. But we didn't go for it. We also did not ask our landlord about it, whether he would like to do it or not, or things like that, because we really did not want to go into the formalities of opening up another bank account and things like that. So we're just giving the deposit amount to him in his bank account, because as such the interest amount is not that very much in Germany when you compare it with India, and we're habituated to that one, so it's okay, not a big deal for us. And yes, if you've hired a broker or an agent to help you find an apartment, then his or her fees would generally be near to 2 or 3 months of your basic rent, which is your cultivators, your cold rent. So I personally think that that's very expensive. So we went ahead and looked for it ourselves. Moving on to the expectations part of it. A house in Germany would generally include a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a storage space in the basement. Now, obviously, if you're looking for a bigger house, you'll be having more bedrooms, and it depends. Also, your apartment might have a balcony or a garden that comes along with it, and that's great if you have that. One thing to keep in mind is that if the advertisement mentions that the apartment is unfurnished, then there are very high chances that you would not even have a kitchen installed in the apartment. Yes, in India, we have the kitchen that's like fixed and installed in the apartment when we rent it, even if the apartment is unfurnished. But over here, you need to bring your own kitchen, or else you can buy kitchen and the other furniture from the previous tenant, and that's what we did with our new home. But one thing to keep in mind when you are buying the furniture from the previous tenant is that when you'll be returning the house, when you'll be moving out, obviously you need to return the house as an unfurnished one. So you cannot leave any of the furniture that you've bought over there. So you need to either take it with you or find the next tenant who will be living over there and buy your furniture that you had bought from the previous tenant. Which is why sometimes the tenants who show you the place might not even let the landlord know that you're interested if you're not interested in buying the furniture, if you're only interested in the flat. And many a times you do get an edge over others if you are wanting to buy the whole furniture, or you're wanting to keep everything as it is, like the carpets and things like that. That's how we got the house that we really loved. We were the only ones who were interested in the house and the furniture and had no problems with the carpeting of that particular house. Everyone had something or the other in their preferences. So because everything was setting perfectly with us, we were given priority. You can also choose to live in a studio apartment, which means that there's an apartment in which you have one room which serves as your living room, bedroom, kitchen, everything. You'll have a separate corner wherein you'll have a small kitchen, generally a student kitchen. So that's a really small one. And currently we live in a studio apartment, which is why I found it pretty small, and the kitchen especially, I find it very small. So that's why we are moving. So just in case if you had that question in your mind. Obviously, with the studio apartment, you'll also be getting the bathroom and the basement storage space that I mentioned at the beginning of this category. And the final thing that I want to mention under this category is that they do not use the term BHK in Germany. Like in India, if you want to describe an apartment and we want to tell them how big it is or how many rooms it has, we'll say 1 BHK, 2 BHK, 3 BHK. BHK stands for bedroom, hall and kitchen. So if you're talking about a 2 BHK, you'll be having 2 bedrooms, 1 hall, 1 kitchen, and the bathroom. If there are more bathrooms, then that will be mentioned separately. But otherwise, you talk about things in BHKs. But over here, you are talking about things in number of rooms. So a 2 BHK would be a 3-room apartment in Germany. So you include the living room and the bedroom, and then you talk about it. Basically in Germany, they mention the number of rooms that they are offering, excluding the kitchen, the bathroom and the storage space, while mentioning the apartment in an advertisement. So a 3 BHK can also include a living room, a bedroom, an office, a kitchen, a bathroom, and the storage space. Now, an office, because it's a room in itself that you can use as a bedroom if you want to, so it will be included as a room sort of a thing only. So when I would read about the apartments in the advertisements and the search system, I would minus the number by 1 and place it into my BHK model in order to understand it better, or the way that I have been habituated with. Now that we've looked at different types of accommodations, how to look for an apartment, we now know how can we go for a reasonable or an economical option, and we've set the expectations clear. Let's talk about the process. When you're looking at different options of apartments, be it on the website or in advertisements, and you like what you see or you like what you read, then express your interest to the advertiser. Let them know by sending a message that you would like to visit them and seek an appointment for that. Yes, it is very important to have the appointment when you want to go and visit and look at a particular place. And by taking an appointment, it does not mean that you will be the only one who is visiting that particular place at that particular time. It can be a gathering of a lot of people. It can also be an open house wherein there's one full day or a fixed number of hours wherein people are allowed to come and look at the apartment if they are interested in buying it or renting it out. So get to know those details and fix the appointment. When you visit the place, many a times you'll be asked for your details. They'll get your number, your name, what do you do for a living and things like that, even if you do not express your interest to go further. So whether you're interested or not, you do give your details. And in our case, when we gave the details, we thought that because the person has our number, we have expressed our interest, then they'll let us know whether we are getting the apartment or not. Whereas they were waiting for us to tell them whether we would like to go ahead with the apartment or not. After looking at it, do we want to take it on rent or not? So we actually ended up wasting a few weeks because of this misunderstanding. Normally, when you visit an apartment and you say that you're interested in renting it, then you are given a form to fill it. Now, we did express our interest verbally on our visit, but there was no form, so we just figured that they'll be emailing it to us or things like that. So I would personally say that it's always better to go with a filled form and with your documents so that you are saving yourself another trip. Moreover, you're showing your preparedness. So if you have your form already filled that you can download from online or things like that, they might be having a separate form, but if the details are more or less the same, and high chances that they are, then you can just give your own or you can fill the other form. But if you face a situation like we did, wherein the tenant or the person who was attending us did not have any form in hand and just noted down our name and number and things like that, then there might be a confusion. And we were lucky that nobody else was happy with the furniture and the carpet, but what if there was, and we might have lost the apartment just because of a silly misunderstanding. So I would highly recommend taking the form, a filled form, and your documents. Generally a credit score, the SHUFA certificate also helps because that gives you a credibility and the landlord will feel secure in giving the apartment to you. But otherwise as well, it's better if you take your pay slips and some identification documents and the form with you, submit it on the day you visit it and show interest in it. But if you do not do that and do not submit your documents and the forms on your first visit, then you will do another visit. You take an appointment for the next visit and submit your documents and the form on the second visit. After they receive all the documents and the forms of the people that are interested, they do some scanning and then they select whom would they like to give the apartment to. So over here, there is a selection process of the tenants and it does not go by the first come first serve as it does in India. Like in India, I've searched for apartments quite a few times, like in Mumbai and in Surat, and in both cases, if I liked an apartment, I would just let the landlord know then and there that I like it. The person would be like, yeah, fine, okay, go ahead. This is the deposit amount and this is the rent. I require these documents, and you just submit those documents and you give the deposit amount or at least a token booking amount at that point of time. and the apartment is yours. So it's pretty simple over there, but over here there are a few steps that you need to overcome in order to complete the process, and this is the most important step. So generally the selection happens according to whether you have a good credit score or not. So obviously they are trying to understand whether you'll be able to pay the rent on a timely basis every month. And the second important factor that would decide whether you get the apartment or not is how long are you expected to live in that particular place. And that has high influence of the stage of life that you're in. So all in all, a family has higher chances of getting an apartment because a family would not like to move again and again. But if you are single or if you are in a job that would require a lot of transfers, then you might have some difficulty in getting the apartment. Normally they let you know in a week or 10 days if they have selected you to give the apartment on rent to. But if they have not selected you, then there are some cases wherein they do inform you about it, and in some cases they don't. So do not sit and wait for things like that. If you have been selected, then many a times you go again in order to discuss the minute details. Like we went there in order to discuss the costing of the furniture that we were buying from the previous tenant. And that visit had also combined with the contract signing visit. So, but you can have a separate visit for that as well. We were emailed the contract to us by the landlord, and we went through the contract for 3 to 4 days. And then we met him, we signed the contract, we talked about the price of the furniture and things like that, and things were sealed. The final and the most exciting step is the handover, and we're gonna have it tomorrow. I'm recording this video on Wednesday, and Thursday is the day when we get the house. We get the handover of the house. So we'll be getting the keys tomorrow, and we'll be signing that we've received the keys. We might get some more know-how or gyan as to how things work over there, maybe the garbage system and things like that. We did got to know a lot of it earlier as well, but just a final touch up maybe. And yeah, then the shifting and the most tiresome part would begin. So I'm looking forward to it. The final category is the contract and the formalities. Over here, I won't be able to tell you everything about it or most of the things about it because it is very subjective. It depends from situation to situation, from person to person, place to place. So I can't give you a lot of things in this category, but I'll at least tell you what to look out for. So the first thing that's very important is that the contract is obviously going to be in German, and hence if you yourself are not very good at German, then it's always better to take a friend along who's good at German, or if you have a German friend, then that's great. If you do not have both the options, then you can consider going for an agent or a broker, or else you can translate the contract with the help of Google or other apps, and it will be highly advisable if you talk to a lawyer, make the lawyer go through the contract and let you know if there's anything that you should be concerned about. Generally in Germany, if you want to cancel any contract, then you need to give a notice of 3 months. So that is the case with an apartment contract as well, especially if the time period is not mentioned in the contract. You might have a contract that mentions a specific time period, then obviously it's valid only till that particular time period. Check in the contract if there are some specific rules that you need to follow according to the rules of the building that you're living in or the society that you're living in, or whatever the preference of the landlord is. The German law requires you to maintain silence and peace after 10 p.m. on every weekday and on Sundays. These are rest period, and hence you should ensure that you're not disturbing any of your neighbors or other people around your house. In some of the apartments, you are required to paint the apartment or put the wallpapers on the apartment after you move in. In some, you're required to do that before you move out. So you need to get that clear with your landlord or check it in your contract. There are high chances that the contract would also mention the kind of temperature that you should maintain in your house. So it's better to have a thermostat that lets you know the temperature of the house and the percentage of humidity, because in some houses the humidity is needed to be within a certain level. Otherwise, it might end up ruining the walls, and it is really expensive for the tenant in order to correct the problem that was created. We've already talked about the furniture in the expectations category of the video, and that is that you need to check whether the house is fully furnished or not, semi-furnished or fully unfurnished, what are the things that you have to leave or what are the things that you need to buy. and things like that, and those would also be mentioned in your contract. Check the contract for any hidden costs. There might be something that you might require to pay as a tenant that the landlord might have missed out on telling you, or things like that. So it's always better to have a clear picture. So look into it for the extra costs. Ask the landlord, even if there's nothing mentioned, ask the landlord if there are anything that you are obliged to pay during the year or during your tenure of stay. It is also advisable to take the photographs of the condition of the house when you move in with the permission of the landlord. And it's always better if the pictures also mention the date and time when they were clicked. Because when you're leaving the house, there might be a disagreement about any particular thing between you and the landlord. You might say that this thing was in this particular condition right from the time that you moved in, and the landlord might say that it was in a better condition and it is now at a worse condition after you moved in. So you might have spoiled it. And if you do not have any proof, you might have to pay for it at the end of it. So it's always better to have your proofs in hand. I'm saying so because I've heard a few people talk about such bitter experiences. Be it in Germany or in India, you can meet some people like that and you do not know your landlord as yet, because obviously you've known him just for a few months and you've only met him a few times. So it's always better to be on a safer side. So I think I'm done with most of the formalities that are there, but if I'm missing out on anything, then please do me a favor by mentioning it in the comments below so that all of us can be well aware and deal with situations in a better way. So I hope that this video was of help to you and you enjoyed watching it, even if it is a really long one, and I apologize for it, but I did want to give out a lot of things that I did not know what are the things that would be but obvious to a few people. So I just went on with every detail that I had. So if you liked it or enjoyed it or found it helpful, then please don't forget to hit that like button, because you know that your likes bring me smiles, your comments make me think, and your subscribes and shares make me grin. So I'll see you next weekend in the new apartment. Till then, Alvida and Auf Wiedersehen.